Alrighty, so what's going on with this summer low volatility trading? Let's kind of go into this past day or so. It is currently July 14th, Tuesday. So let's recap a bit of Monday's session, as well as this morning's session, and kind of go into what this summer low volatility trading is all about and kind of what the best ways are to navigate it. So, we've been essentially since the Thursday afternoon or so been in a range here from 75.73 to 76.11. This has kind of been the mode 2 basing range we've kind of been in, with putting in a few traps to the downside, as well as a trap here to the upside. But essentially, we've been circulating within this mode 2 basing range. So, first things first, we had a potential entry here at 75.67 yesterday midday. 75.67 was an overnight low that we had made, essentially from the Sunday night session. And so it was a valid failed breakdown spot to eye. One of the key things to note here is it wasn't a huge kind of elevator sell down into the level. It was a bit choppy and a bit of a slower sell, but nonetheless, we did put in a sweep here of about 7 points, and tried to recover this by sticking above the danger zone, and trying to push the momentum. But the biggest thing here to note is the fact that there really just was not a lot of momentum here. As you can see, price really was struggling at this point in time to even really make, moves that were more than a few points at a time to the upside or the downside. I mean, and the 15-minute chart here kind of showcases it really well. So pretty much from 12:30 all the way till 3 p.m., this was just a lot of gross sideways chop. So, it was a valid failed breakdown trade. The entry was valid, the trade is valid, but just a key thing to note, which is, in this environment, when we are sort of in this lower volatility summer trading environment, when there's just no volatility, no momentum, these moves are just not necessarily going to work. Or if they do, it's, you have to be prepared to sit on it for hours at a time before it takes off, in either direction. Eventually here late day in the afternoon, we did end up fading off of it. So, didn't really get much more than a few points max if you were able to get a trim off of this, before this kind of headed downwards, for potentially the next trade here, which was 75.53. And this was a low that we had from Friday, where we actually put in a nice 2 point sweep, so a very shallow sweep around 3:30 at the end of the day here, and tried to put in a failed breakdown here. This was another valid entry, but again, just all you got was one level up to 67, before this also started fading back downwards. So, just kind of goes to show here, these are two trades that occurred yesterday where, one really went for technically a level that was just 3 points up to 78 here. And this one, same thing, just one level up to 67 and failed. And so, there just wasn't really much juice, much momentum here at any point during the day. And so really just not much to do in these circumstances where, you can take the trade, it's valid entry, but just have to note that in the environment we're in, you have to, one, either be super aggressive with profit taking, or, just skip it altogether and wait for, a kind of better momentum push out of the lows before trying to get long. So that's kind of how yesterday went. And then, eventually overnight, we did end up putting in a nice larger sort of a sweep here of 75.53 all the way down to 31. And then overnight, we did recover this 53 level, and we were able to get a couple of pushes and levels out of this. If you were awake overnight to take this, And this failed breakdown technically remained active in the morning for anyone that was interested in potentially putting on a wake and bid. That was also a valid option, knowing that the failed breakdown was active as long as we were above 75.31. And with the CPI, we did get a nice little rocket up for a very nice move, and now we're just kind of back to summer chop. So that is kind of how, the theme I would embark on everyone to remember over these next, we still are in just the middle of July, so we may get another month or month and a half of price action like this, which is, very typical. And I think the biggest keys and themes to remember are going to be a lot of the action is going to be untradeable. It's going to be a lot of sideways chop. The best thing we can do is just wait for those clear and obvious elevator sell downs we will get maybe once every other day, once every 2 days. Try to get in on the failed breakdown of that when there is some good momentum coming out of the low, and then try to hold those runners as long as possible, as the runners may be able to last a couple of days until we get the next elevator sell down. So really just being extra patient, waiting for that momentum to come in, and just not engaging until it's a clear elevator sell down. Those are going to be really the keys of the summer. Trading volume is going to generally be lower, and that's just something we have to keep in mind going forward into the rest of the summer. So that is kind of how we're starting off the week. We will see what happens here going forward into the rest of the week. As I said, we're coming back into the into this mode 2 basing range here again. So we'll see if it's some price expansion here, or if we're able to finally put in a strong trend move.